Welcome back to Royals Weekly. I am your host, Marcus Mead, and joining me as always, part-time doorman at the Pink Pony Club, my brother Mike.
The old Pink Pony Club. I don't get the reference.
You don't get the reference? Oh, this
No.
is how out of touch Mike is, everyone.
Aye.
All of our listeners understand this reference because
Okay,
they're
good.
not stuck in their own little bubble. Pink Pony Club is the title of a song from Chapel Roan that's blown up over the course of the last few months. No? Okay.
Who?
Yeah, exactly. What's funny, Chapel Roan is like the biggest pop star in the world right now.
Are you
And
kidding me?
She's from Missouri, right?
Really? I don't
Yeah.
even know who this
And you have
person
no
is.
clue who this is. That's what I find hilarious.
Dang it! I gotta get on something then.
I'll be honest. I live with Riggs, and so that's how I know who she is. Right?
Okay.
Like Riggs is on top of the new
I
fangled
thought Taylor
music.
Swift was the biggest.
I mean,
person
she
in the
is. I'm talking like biggest new thing, like the biggest
Oh,
new
okay.
thing.
Okay.
You know,
Cool. Good
but
for
anyway,
her.
for all of you
I'll
who
be the
know,
doorman.
you know that Chapel Roan does nothing but bangers. I saw Tucker. What's his last name? I'm blanking on
Franklin?
his last name. Yeah, put out a thing about Chapel Roan on Twitter the other day, talking about she puts out nothing but bangers, and he is right. She does put out a ton of bangers. But anyway, that's enough of our music criticism. Let's talk about baseball. On this week's episode, we're breaking down a fairly tame week from the Royals because they only played like 5 games this week. And then we're discussing what the Royals will need to compete with the tough teams that they have coming up on their schedule. And then we'll preview this next week's slate of games. But first, we want to remind you, go out and leave a comment on Apple Podcasts. Go out and subscribe to the Royals Weekly Substack. We're putting out a bunch of content through there. We had a good episode this last week. We talked a little bit about Mike. What did we talk about in our last episode? My brain is mush.
New trade people that we got. Was that it? Or
We talked about the bullpen again. Really, we talked about
yeah.
that a bunch. And then in the
Oh, it was
Going
the
Farming
number of
segment-
it was number of innings the starters had pitched. We talked
Oh,
about
that's
that.
right. We talked about the numbers in his starters pitch. We talked about the farm system in some interesting ways. A couple of people who have done some interesting things lately. So yeah, make sure you're subscribed to the Royals Weekly Substack. Make sure you're leaving a comment on Apple Podcasts. We haven't had a comment on there in a while. We'd love to hear what you have to say, even if it's negative. We take negative criticism very well. So yeah, just let us know by reaching out to us, leaving comments, and giving us likes and stuff. We also want to remind you that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Not number 2, number 1. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics, although that's over now, so you can't bet on that anymore. Baseball to Formula One racing. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the games are over, head on over to their online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or a game of poker, or unwind on one of their over 150 slot games. Head over to the website today to get on the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online. The game starts here. We'll start the review of last week with roster news. There wasn't much, but there was kind of one important bit of roster news we need to talk about. Mike, Hunter Harvey was placed on the 15-day IL, retroactive to August 7th, with mid-back tightness. Also, Michael Massey scratched from a lineup with some back tightness as well. Back tightness was a real thing this week. It was like a theme of the injury news. Mike, so Hunter Harvey's going to be down for a little bit. Carlos Hernandez was recalled to replace him. What are your thoughts on seeing Hunter Harvey go down and Carlos Hernandez come up?
Well, it sucks to see because, Harvey's who you traded for. He's somebody you expect a lot out of. And although he has not been great since he got here, I think he's still probably been better than Carlos Hernandez can be. So, that sucks. My hope is that as he's coming back off of this, he does something to get maybe a little bit more feel for the split finger or something to, locate his secondary pitches a little bit better, stuff like that. Things maybe he can improve a little bit, or maybe it's just get your head right before you come back and pitch in the bullpen again. So, take the time you need, get better. And hopefully we can cover over Carlos Hernandez, or he can give us something small. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of faith in him anymore.
Yeah, that's my thoughts exactly. It's not ideal to see one of your big bullpen trade acquisitions go down to the IL, but this is the downside of trades at the deadline. I kept warning people like, hey, guess what? Not every trade you make at the deadline is going to hit. Some guy's going to get hurt. Some guy's going to underperform. Like, they can't all be bangers. Everybody was talking about like, oh, if we trade for somebody, obviously they're going to give us their 100th percentile performance for the rest of the year. It's like, quit dreaming, quit living in fantasy land. This isn't MLB The Show. You have to think realistically. And so the idea that Harvey would go down, he hasn't been exactly what we wanted him to be so far. He's now hurt. That's all like a bad outcome. I hope, like you do, that this time down in some way refreshes him. Maybe gives him a little bit of a break for his arm. I know it's mid back tightness and they'll do treatment on that, but a few days not throwing certainly won't do damage to his arm. And so he gets a little bit of a rest in that sense, and maybe gets a chance to work on some stuff coming back that might help him out a little bit. We do always have to wonder. I always wonder about stuff like this, and especially when they're like, "Oh, it's mid back tightness," when it's like these really kind of
really vague ones.
Yeah, I'm like, is this the shadow IL that we're seeing right here?
Is this
Are they
just a
putting him
refresh?
Right. So there is this notion, and it does happen, where teams put guys on the IL not because they're hurt, but for other reasons. They want to give them a rest. They want to work on something. That is a possibility. Is it 100% the case that it's happening here? No, we don't. We have no indication that that's what's happening here. But it would, we're just saying if that is what's happening here, he has a chance to work on some stuff, which isn't a bad thing. On the field last week, it was weird because every once in a while the Royals have this week where they're like, we're only going to play 5 games. We're going to have 2 off days this week. And that's what happened this week. There was this 3-game series against the Red Sox that was really important, then a 2-gamer against the Cardinals. They got off days in between and after, and it was just like a lot of not playing baseball this week. But somehow things look better today than they did a week ago, mostly because the Guardians and Red Sox have been losing quite a bit this week. Even though the Red Sox took those series with the Royals, they've done a lot of losing other than that this week. And so the Royals have actually gained ground in the AL Central and in the wildcard standings. They're now up 3 games in the wildcard standings, and I believe they're back 4 games in the AL Central. So things look pretty bleak for the Royals after they dropped the 2 of 3 from the Red Sox earlier last week, but they managed to grab a split from the Cardinals, so that helped a little. Mike, how are you feeling about the action that took place on the field last week?
Still a little disappointed that the bullpen hasn't taken a bigger step forward yet. We saw complete bullpen meltdown in the Red Sox series, and then we saw it again in the first game when the game is still close and the bullpen just lets it go. I mean, in that first Cardinals game. And so a little bit disappointed that we didn't see a step forward. Not that we haven't seen some things from Ursig. He's been very good. We did see him go over, he pitched an inning and a third to get a save the other day, I think.
Yeah.
So, there's been some things that you like. It's just the bullpen's still way too volatile, still way too likely to give up a game.
Yeah, and that's sort of what the theme. That's why we've been talking about the bullpen so much lately, is it seems to be the thing that is really holding this team back. That whole Red Sox series, though, kind of put a sour taste in my mouth because the play generally was pretty sloppy. The Royals didn't play great defense during that series. Michael Massey had a couple really key errors. One of them wasn't an error. I don't know if they counted it as that. It was at least a mental mistake.
Oh, yeah. He tried to go to second on that shuffle.
Yeah. And then he did have a literal error in game 1 of that Red Sox series that cost him a couple runs. And so, the play itself was not tremendous. There were some mistakes made in this, Cardinal series too, honestly. And so, it wasn't a real crisp week of play from the Royals. They managed to get 2 wins out of it, which is, salvaging something. But after that Red Sox series, I was starting to think, oh man, this is not good because, they're going to have trouble if they can't beat teams like the Red Sox and Cardinals. You know what I'm saying? We'll see as they get into the tougher stretch of the schedule here, but was not tremendous. I didn't come out of this week thinking, oh, they're definitely going to make the playoffs or anything like that. They did have some strong performers this week, though. I mean, especially because the offense did some nice things. Mike, who did you choose for the strong performer this week?
I went with Kyle Isbell, one of the guys you often put in there pretty much every chance you can. So scooped him up before you could put him in there.
First, I look at his stats and I think, is it plausible for me to put Kyle Isbell in here? Because I love him so much. Then I consider the others.
Then he considers everybody else on the team. Bobby Witt Jr., meh.
Kyle
Isbell. There we go. 5 for 15 this week with 5 runs, 2 triples, 2 RBIs, 2 walks, just 1 strikeout and 1 stolen base. He seemed like he was kind of always in the middle of the rallies that the Royals were having this week when they had them. And, the triples were big. The walk, I think he's 5 runs every time he got on base. Basically, he scored. So, if he can continue to be an offensive contributor, that sets up a lot of big things at the bottom of the lineup. Well, really to turn the lineup over to get Bobby Witt Jr. and Vinny Pasquantino and guys like that bringing him in. So I think, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later, I think he and a couple other people are key in getting more consistency within this offense.
Yeah, he getting those guys at the bottom of the lineup on base is such a huge advantage when you have a Bobby Witt Jr. hitting second, when you have Vinny Pasquantino hitting third, Salvador Perez hitting fourth, and things like that. Like if you can get Isbell and Garcia, who have been really their 8-9 tandem that's really worked out well. If you can get those guys on base, man, it opens up possibilities. And he did a great job this week and has really sort of found his offensive profile in a way that I think is really interesting and gives him a chance to be an everyday player basically for the Royals.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't think he actually had good plate appearances, but I thought at times this week he was just pounding the ball on the ground. And it was like, oh man, but then he comes up and boom, there's one off the wall. You're like, okay. So it felt a little inconsistent even. And he ended up with great numbers and being, scoring some important runs.
Yeah. Another guy who did pretty well offensively for the Royals this week, MJ Melendez. He went 5 for 13, 1 double, 3 walks, and only 1 strikeout. And that strikeout number is always going to be hugely important for Melendez. If he's putting the ball in play, he'll be fine, right? Like if he's putting the ball in play, they will fall because he does hit the ball very hard. Like when Melendez makes contact, it is hard. And if they're hard, it's going to find a place to get down at some point. And so we were wondering, what would MJ be like coming off the injury that he came off of? I think in late July 28th, I think was when he was activated. I was looking up his numbers because I wrote about him for the Substack post today. Honestly, he's got a 113 weighted runs created plus since coming off the IL. Pretty good. Not terrible. Knocking the rust off,
Yeah.
And that's on the back of like a 140 batting average on balls in play. The thing that impressed me is that his strikeout percentage is really low since coming off the IL. He's finding a way to avoid doing the things that were causing him to strike out in the past. And that was mostly chasing high fastballs and not being able to touch them. And so if he can continue to be in this place where he lays off those high fastballs, where he doesn't strike out a ton, where, if his strikeout rate is in the teens in any way, look out. MJ Melendez is going to be an extremely valuable player. And so far, in the last month or so, it's been roughly in the teens, low 20s. And so I'm very interested to see what Melendez will do for the rest of this stretch. We're going to talk a little bit moving forward about what the Royals have to do to compete against good teams. And I think MJ Melendez might be a pretty important part of it. Not everybody had their highlight week this week. Mike, who was your week performer for the week?
Hunter Renfroe. I don't know if there could have been a weaker performer, but because he went 0 for 16, he didn't get a hit. He played in every game. Did not record a hit.
There were only 5 games.
Yeah. And so it was 6 strikeouts and no walks. He wasn't even on base at all. So, Hunter Renfroe. Bad week. Has been okay. Has made some adjustments that you and I have liked and talked about. But it wasn't his week.
It was not his week. I went and looked at his numbers too on the year because I got into a back and forth a while back with Alex Duvall, who's a friend of the show, good friend of Mike and I's, about Hunter Renfroe. And Renfroe, his assertion that Renfroe's been exactly what they signed him to be and a good value. And I'm like, I don't think he has been. I'm really grateful that he's turned some things around. And I think that's going to help the Royals. But he has been worth guess how much F-WAR Hunter Renfroe has been worth this year, Mike?
Well, I looked at Vinny's today. His was, that was B-WAR, but his was almost exactly 1. So my comparison will be 0.7.
Lower.
0.2?
F-WAR. Lower.
0.2 F-WAR. Minus 0.2.
He was worth 0.1 F-WAR.
Oh, 0.1.
On the season, he has been worth 0.1 F-WAR. Now, they paid him about $8.5 million, right? Which is worth about 1 F-WAR, right? And so if he makes it to 1 WAR, 1 F-WAR, I'll say, hey, he's worth the money, valuable, that sort of thing. But I don't think he's getting anywhere near that, honestly. And so we'll see.
The big thing is this. The thing that is just crazy to me about Hunter Renfroe is there are still people out there who will argue, and they will talk about on the broadcast, that he is a great outfielder.
He is not a great outfielder. That's the thing that's killing his F-WAR, actually. He's not quite a league average hitter, but he's close on the season. His defense is horrible. It's bad. And that's by Fangraphs' measurements. That's by Baseball Savant's measurements. You can watch him and see the fact that he can't get to a lot of balls if you know what you're looking for.
3 to his right, 3 to his left. He can't go outside either of those. 3 steps right, 3 steps left. That's it.
That's all he's got.
Yes, he's got a good arm. That's worth it once a week, maybe.
Yes, that is worth it every once in a while. But my week performer this week is a guy Mike likes to give me a lot of crap for, so I just thought I would preempt him and then put his name down as a weak performer, and that is Angel Zerpa. He pitched very poorly this week. Up to this point in the season, I would say up to this week, he has been one of the only guys who's been in the bullpen the whole season who you would say, hey, he's been okay. He's been all right. Has he been great? No, but he's been okay throughout the entirety of the season. This week, not the case. That was not the case. He pitched in 2 games. Close. He got a grand total of 2 outs in those 2 games. He gave up 8 hits, 6 earned runs, 2 home runs, 2 walks, just the 1 strikeout. It was not good. He was not getting generating ground balls. He was not staying in the strike zone the way he needed to. Everything was down the middle if it was in the strike zone. The command was bad. The pitch quality was bad. And Zerpa doesn't have an elite arsenal, but it's not garbage. And so, but it looked like garbage this week. And so hopefully he can turn that around, because boy, do they need bullpen help in a bad way. All right, Mike, with such a weird week, what are you going with? You got a weird theme for us, or what's the theme here?
Well, you're reading it going, man, that's weird. That's some weird stuff because I don't get it and I can't make the connection. Okay. But I had to go with it because did you read it? Did you get it?
I just read it. I just read it. Yes, I just read it.
So this is a weird week because the Royals didn't have a winning week, but their situation improved. And it got me thinking about like, well, where else in life does that happen? And actually it happens in the professional world all the time. People who don't really give you any value, they get promoted, like because they've been there the longest, or they're related to somebody, or friends with somebody. It happens all the time. We've all seen that, right? But it drew me to an episode of Seinfeld where I think it's called The Camo, if I remember the name of the episode right. And Elaine is running the catalog, and she promotes this guy because she just doesn't like him and doesn't want to be around him, right? And then people get mad about it. So Jerry Seinfeld says, well, if it's that bad, maybe he's in line for another promotion. And so, like, that's what I'm thinking of. Like, the Royals didn't play great this week. I mean, they fumbled it around that Red Sox series, but it got better for them. Yay! We'll take it. I'll take luck over skill any day.
Yeah, nobody likes everybody likes money for nothing. You know, like that's what I should. Now I'm thinking I should have gone with Dire Straits, money for nothing and chicks for free. That's exactly what we're doing this week, right? It's money for nothing and chicks for free. You know? Which, to be clear, chicks should always be free. You shouldn't be paying for that. That's really. But anyway, I digress. Don't do drugs, kids. My theme this week is also coming from a great comedian. My great comedian is a man named James Acaster, who I've talked about before on this show. And I was thinking along similar lines, Mike. I was thinking about like the theme of like getting help from others, which is what happened this week for the Royals. And James Acaster does this bit about, he's a British comedian and he's a very staunch, anti-Brexit person. So he was like very much for staying in the EU for Britain. And he does this hilarious bit where he talks about the stupidity of Brexit. And he's like essentially playing the character of Great Britain, or the UK, I guess. And he's like, keeps going, we need us, or you need us more than we need you. You need us more than we need you. And he constantly kind of like falling to the ground as he's saying it. And he just keeps saying it. You need us more than we need you. And then he's all the way down to the ground and he's like, help us. Because that's what the UK essentially did. They kept being like, the whole campaign was, you need us more than we need you. And then when the deal came down and they were left and then Britain was like, wait, help us. And this is the same thing is true here. We're like, help us. We lost to the Red Sox. Help us.
Yeah, no kidding. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of a few years ago when the Chiefs needed the Dolphins to beat the Patriots to get the 1 seed. Remember that?
With Fitzmagic.
Everybody was like, yeah, Fitzmagic like leads this massive comeback, and all of a sudden now the Chiefs are the number 1 seed, and they end up like, going through the playoffs or whatever. And it's like, holy crap. This is that. Like we need Boston to keep trying real hard to suck. And actually James Paxton just went down for them too. Today, I think. Today or yesterday. Yeah, so who knows? The Red Sox may not hang on, and I'd be fine with that.
Royals Weekly is brought to you by Eric Oxer of West USA Realty. Phoenix has all of our favorite things: year-round golf, year-round baseball, and Eric Oxer of West USA Realty. Whether you want to buy your dream retirement home or just stay a while and catch spring training, Eric can help you find the perfect house. We've known him for 30 years and trust him far more than we even trust each other.
Sun Tzu once said, "Trust is the heart of that which will lift and drop you." But you're never a Mark, so he'll drop you just to pick up a cupcake or a piece of candy on the floor. So Sun Tzu, smart man, never met that trash bag right there.
Oh, that quote is completely fiction. I just made that up. Eric
Okay.
does long-term rentals for the snowboard crowd and home sales and purchases for those who want to stay a while longer. Are you a baseball player or parent who needs a place to stay in the Phoenix area? Eric will help you find the perfect spot fast. You want to spend your day shanking golf balls into the great beyond? Eric knows the golf scene like Mike knows how to fill his car with empty water bottles without actually drinking any water. Find Eric online at ericoxer.com if you can figure out how to spell his name. It's ERICKAUXIER.com. Or just shoot him a text at 480-383-9745. That's 480-383-9745. Even if you're just curious about what he can do for you, he's 100% no pressure, one of the best people we know.
And he kind of looks like Eric Bana if you squint just a little bit.
Just a little bit. And he's probably taller than Eric Bana, but
tougher.
For sure. We are in the proverbial home stretch right now for the Major League regular season. The Royals have 44 games remaining to solidify a playoff spot and set the fan base up for a disappointing first-round exit. That's less than
no negative stuff. We're in a race. No negative.
I know.
No negative.
It came to my mind. It came to my mind like, hey, will fans be okay if we just make the playoffs and get bounced in the first round? It seems like we could have never even asked for that to start the year, but they'll be so pissed if that ends up happening. That's less than a third of the season remaining that we have left. And plenty has been made about the fact that the second half of August and the first half of September see the Royals facing a number of really good teams, including the Twins, Guardians, Phillies, Astros, and Yankees. That is going to be a rough 4 weeks. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunity in that stretch because they play the Guardians and the Twins, but it will not be easy. Mike, you and I have discussed the Royals' struggles facing good teams. Besides the obvious, why do you think they struggle so much against the good competition?
Well, I think when you talk about good teams, one thing the good teams in Major League Baseball have figured out is that starting rotation usually, right? You're not skating through in a playoff race when you haven't figured out who your 5 starters are and you don't have a little bit of competency there. And so the things that those types of pitching staffs can do are exploit the biggest weaknesses of our lineup. Okay? Those staffs a lot of times have guys that can take advantage of you being too aggressive. They can exploit those weaker hitters in your lineup because you don't have a really deep lineup. They can throw. Well, they're like Michael Wacha. Michael Wacha is the kind of guy that, he may have a higher ERA, but he's a competent pitcher.
I think his ERA is under 3 right now.
Michael Wacha? No way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Give me a second. I'll look it up. But you keep talking. I'll look it up.
Under 3. Wow. But he's the kind of guy I'm saying it's the style that he pitches, right? He won't cave into you. I'll continue to throw a curveball that leaves the zone a little bit and the changeup and the changeup and the changeup again. And it'll be out of the zone, in the zone. You never know what's happening, but he has a mastery of facing those types of hitters. And then he can kind of skate through on your weak hitters, and that's why the Royals struggle with guys that sometimes don't have the best stuff in the world, or maybe a little bit more command first. And the teams that make the playoffs have that's their 4 and 5 starter a lot of times, or they're the Dodgers, who just pile strikeout guys all over the place. But these are teams that have a rotation that has figured out how to pitch, and everybody in that rotation knows how to pitch, and they can exploit some of those things in our lineup that make us streaky.
Wacha has a 3.5 ERA. I was wrong.
3.5.
3.5.
Well, it was like 4.5. But that's very good.
It's been coming down significantly. It's that. I think on the flip side of that, early in the year, especially the first 3 months or so, the Royals had a ton of lack of swing and miss in their bullpen earlier this year, and that they could get the weak contact and the stuff they needed to beat the bad teams because they have a lot of bad hitters. Good teams have this more depth in their lineup, and if you can't generate any swing and miss against them, they will just keep fouling pitches off until they put something in play hard, or until they get an extra base hit or something like that. And that lack of swing and miss from the bullpen early in the year really hurt them against good teams. It might still hurt them against good teams, though they have improved their swing and miss, adding guys like Sam Long and Chris Bubich and Lucas Ursig and even Hunter Harvey to some extent. That should help them, but we haven't really got a chance to see what they'll look like against good lineups with this new bullpen that they have. Mike, in your thought, what can the Royals do to have a better opportunity to beat these good teams?
Well, the first thing I think, and we've mentioned this, I think in the midweek episode last week, you got to get the bullpen roles figured out, which I think they're starting to do a little bit, but it should have happened. I mean, you didn't want it to take this long even, you wanted it to kind of fall into place, the usage of these guys and how they work best, and then start rolling, but they just haven't done that yet. And then the starters need to continue to be what they've been so far this year. And that's a tall ask. Continue to be healthy, continue to be able to go 6+ innings every start, continue to make every start every fifth day, and strike guys. I mean, they've been so good. It's almost like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like something's got to give at some point. We got to find a way to rest them. We got to find a way to do something, but the starters need to be that good and the bullpen roles got to get situated.
Yeah, I think they kind of have a sense of what those bullpen roles are. And I put down here, like, figure out bullpen priority as well. I think they kind of know Ursig, Bubic, and Long will be our best three at this point. Harvey will kind of be just behind them. And then after that, they're kind of still figuring it out. Like, how do you hide Will Smith? How do you hide Chris Stratton? Like, they still have a couple of real liabilities in this bullpen, and they're doing their best to hide them in these low leverage situations and stuff. But at some point, you hit a point where, hey, Chris Stratton's going to have to pitch in important spots. Will Smith's going to have to pitch in important spots. And when that's the case,
for sure is going to have to.
Zerpa is going to have to. Like you can't.
You got to be able to count on that.
5 and 6 reliever are definitely going to have to. Your 7 and 8 reliever are still going to have to occasionally. And so, they have to sort of figure out what they're doing with those guys, and then with their top 3 guys, Long, Ursig, and Bubic. They have to figure out which one is going to go in where and who's going to sort of fill what role. I think they've kind of figured that out at this point. I think they see Ursig as their number 1 guy out of the bullpen. I think they see Bubic as their number 2, and I think they see Long as their number 3, honestly. And so those guys will fill different roles different nights. I'm not a big fan of the notion that, this guy needs to be a closer. He can only pitch in the ninth. I think that's ridiculous. But hopefully they deploy those guys in the most valuable spots. I also think, though, that a big part of their success against good teams will come down to depth in their lineup. So I'm looking at 2 guys in particular, MJ Melendez and Hunter Renfroe. What are they going to provide offensively? If they can provide something offensively that takes their lineup from a lineup that has like 4 or 5 guys you like and can trust to one that has 6 or 7, and then a couple of guys at the bottom who in Garcia and Isbell, who if they're on that day, your offense is just is going to score 13 or 14 runs, right? Like, because, you then have an offense that's really, really deep. And so I think MJ and Renfroe are the 2 I'm looking at offensively as key to their ability to beat good teams. Mike, in September, rosters will expand and the Royals will have a chance to bring 2 players up from AAA to sort of supplement that September run. Do you have thoughts on how they should fill those roster spots?
I do, but I actually think that I want you to go first here.
I'm going to, because you've done something that's not possible. You're not allowed to have those. So I will go first. Let me give you my thoughts first. Yes, they can only bring up 1 pitcher. You can only have 14 when they.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
well, they can't okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So my thoughts are that I would like to see them bring Alec Marsh back up to relieve, to go some relief innings. He's been throwing 3-inning stints down in AAA, but he has been starting for those 3-inning stints. I wonder if they may not transition him to the bullpen to have him throwing some 3-inning stints or something like that, or they may do some other interesting things. This also may just be like, hey, Alec Marsh is essentially done for the season. We're having him throw 3-inning stints because we don't want his innings count to get any higher. It could be something like that. But I would like to see them think of Marsh as supplement for the bullpen in September and bring him back up to relieve. I would also like to see them bring Tyler Gentry up to relieve. And I actually went back and forth on this one about what position players should be brought up to help with the bench or to supplement or something like that. And I just started thinking, you know what? The guy I want them to bring up, they don't need more speed off the bench, really. They got Hampson. They got Blanco. They're good for speed off the bench. I want them bringing up somebody who I know will give them a good plate appearance, who has a little bit of power potential, not a ton, but a little bit of pop, and who's really, really hot right now offensively. And that's Tyler Gentry. And so a right-handed bat to help with some lefties. They struggle with lefties generally. I think he might be a good addition to their bench, and he's already on the 40-man, so that's good too. All right, Mike, what do you have?
Well, I was going to go with 2 pitchers. That was my thing because I didn't know it had to be one position.
You don't know the
player, one
roster
pitcher.
rules.
I guess I don't know the roster rules. I guess. Well, still, I'm going to say this real quick. I think it'd be smart to find a way to get Alec Marsh and Jonathan Bolin into that bullpen at the same time. You can get rid of somebody, right?
Oh, okay.
Will Smith, you know what I'm saying? That's what I would like to do because I think your goal is going to be to rest that starting pitching staff as much as you possibly can, whether that's finding a way to add one of them as a 6th starter or, as a piggyback kind of guy, or a way that you can pull guys out after 5 instead of letting them go 7, whatever it is. I think that's smart, but I'll throw Alec Marsh in there because I think they need to figure out what his bullpen role can be in September. So that way he's ready to go come playoff time. And then for the hitter, I'll go with Velasquez, I guess. Now he hasn't had the greatest numbers in AAA so far, but he's hit some home runs. He's hit for power. It gives you a right-handed bat off the bench that has a chance to hit one over the fence in a big situation if you need to. So that's something.
Yeah, he was one of the ones I sort of thought about. Royals Weekly is brought to you by All in Physical Therapy. You already know that All in Physical Therapy turned our mother into a trained weapon of destruction. But what you don't know is that Mom loved her experience there because of the personal attention she got from Tommy and the staff at All In. They guarantee a personalized, one-on-one experience to suit the needs of patients recovering from total joint surgeries, sports injuries, or any kind of injury or pain.
I get a shooting pain in my shoulder every time I pee. Now, is that normal?
Yeah, I think that sounds normal to me. I mean,
shoulder bone connected to the pee bone, right?
Yeah, exactly. All in Physical Therapy is owned and operated by Tommy Freebert with locations in Blue Springs, Lee Summit, and now Belton. And they are just I just said that already. We're good. Most importantly, they're in network for nearly all insurance providers.
I'm not sure what role the shoulder has in urination, but thank God I'm in network so I can find out.
Yeah, this is more of an exploratory kind of a thing.
Yeah.
If you're a high school athlete recovering from injury or someone bouncing back with a brand new hip or knee, check out the best physical therapy in the KC Metro at allin-pt.com. That's ALLIN-pt.com. Or give them a call at 816-427-5300. That's 816-427-5300. It's a 6-game road trip this week with the boys in blue headed to Minnesota to take on the Twins for 3 before jumping over to Cincinnati for some Skyline chili and a date with the Cincinnati Reds. Mike, have you ever seen that Skyline chili? And if so, would you eat it?
Disgusting.
It does look disgusting.
No, I'm not eating that.
I wouldn't eat it either. I wouldn't eat it either.
If I want spaghetti, I eat spaghetti. If I want chili, I eat chili. I don't smash those things together and
Never
then call
occurred
it
to me to do
legendary. Get out of here. And
Get out of here.
Looks terrible.
Anyway, tell us about the Twins.
They're good at baseball. I can tell you that. In that Twin series, let's see, the Twins are 65-52, so extremely close to us. And a second in the AL Central right ahead of us. And they are also occupying the spot for the first wild card spot. Is that correct?
I think they're the second wild card spot. Yankees.
Are there 3 now?
Yes, I think there are 3 now.
So Yankees, Twins, and us. Okay. The first game would be Singer versus Pablo Lopez, the 28-year-old righty out of Venezuela. He's got a 4.47 ERA, which doesn't sound great, but his whip is in good shape with a 1.16. He's a good pitcher. He's a solid guy. We saw him on opening day, actually. He 7 innings, 1 run. So he didn't do too bad on opening day. We have seen him quite a bit in the last couple of years. He's got a 4-seam fastball in the mid-90s, a sweeper, a changeup, curveball, and a sinker. He's got a great fastball, but his secondaries get hit a little bit more. The question will be, can he keep Vinny off of some of those secondary pitches and some of those better left-handed hitters in the lineup? So after that, we know it's going to be Lugo and Reagans have been announced. You like that? Singer, Lugo, Reagans, you love that in the series. It gives you a good chance. But the Twins have not announced their starting pitchers yet, so we don't know who they'll be going against. But that series is not only huge, it's also sets up pretty well for the Royals. Oh, and Joe Ryan's hurt, by the way.
Yeah, so we know he won't pitch.
It's not going to be Joe Ryan.
Yeah, but they do have some other good pitchers. We'll see what they're doing to fill out those last couple of games. After Minnesota, they head to Cincinnati to the tiny Great American Ballpark. For the Reds, who are 57 and 61, that's fourth in the NL Central. Their offense, you would think that they'd be a great offensive team given the ballpark they play in. Not very good. Their offense is 90, has a 91 rated runs created plus, which is good for 25th in Major League Baseball. They're getting good years from Ellie De La Cruz, who's got a 130 OPS plus, and Tyler Stevenson, who's got a 110 OPS plus. But that's about it. They have a pretty shallow lineup. It's not very deep. Their pitching has been better than their hitting. Their pitching has a 3.91 ERA. That's 11th in Major League Baseball. Hunter Green is their best starter. He's been a revelation for them with a 2.90 ERA and about 130 innings. Andrew Abbott and Nick Lodolo are also having pretty good years. Their bullpen is really hit and miss, though, so they'll have some chances late in games to come back if they need to. We'll end this week's episode, like we end every episode, with the Just About Outside segment, where we talk about something that's interesting to us outside the world of baseball. Mike, you and I played golf earlier this week. You've had a lot going on. As this is your Is this your last week? Your last free week of summer here?
Last free whole week. I've got Monday and Tuesday off still, but yeah.
So tell us what went down in your last fun week of summer.
Well, a ton of fun stuff went down. The golf. I played golf 3 times in 1 week. That was cool. Took a lot of naps, that sort of stuff. But what I've been hearing a lot about, and you and I talked about it when we were golfing, is kind of the discourse over the stock market recently. And people fearing of a recession for about a 24-hour period. And then everybody's like, what are you guys talking about? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Turns out people on the internet overreact to stuff.
I guess, yeah. But it got me thinking again, I've mentioned on the podcast many times, personal finance is kind of a hobby of mine, a passion. I don't know what you call it. Something I've read and learned a lot about.
Graphic design is my passion, Mike.
It's my passion. Sewing hats for little kittens is my passion. But no. So I thought I'd throw this out there. Like, if you're wondering about all this stuff people are talking about with the stock market, and you're a person who's like, I've never invested $1 in my life, I don't understand how the market works or anything like that, or what you should be and could be doing, or a simple way to grow your wealth as a younger person, I'm going to throw this out there. I've done a lot of reading and research and listening to podcasts on growing your personal wealth and creating good habits to do that and all that sort of stuff. The best book I've ever read to simply lay out how you invest in the stock market is a book called The Simple Path to Wealth by a guy named J.L. Collins. Okay. It's a very cheap book. You can buy it paperback. It's in a lot of different languages and stuff too. But, it lays out simply how it all works in a safe and effective way to invest, and a simple way to understand it, for ordinary people. Cause you and I weren't, as advantaged monetarily as youngsters. And so, for us to get into investing and things like that, you kind of have to do it on your own. So, it is the best book I've ever read for that. The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. Give it a shot if you want to, be the one who knows what they're talking about when they're talking about the stock market and investing. Really more about investing than the stock market itself.
Yeah, at the very least, you'll just annoy me less, because having to hear people talk about it who don't know what they're talking about annoys the crap out of me, right? Like, and it's just, and there are a few subjects on which people will offer, well, actually, there are so many subjects where people offer opinions, but investing is one that people feel very comfortable offering opinions they know nothing about. It's like, stop talking about it. You don't know what you're saying. And so, yeah, it's rough. But yes, that is probably a good book. I've never read that one, but I'm sure it's tremendous if you recommend it. I'm talking about something else that came to me a couple of nights ago, and it was such an interesting thought that I had to write it down so I could talk about it today. I don't even know what sparked it in me. I think I heard somebody online talk about like the fact that if something exists on the internet, it exists forever, right? Which is a thing that a lot of my students express to me, and I don't actually believe. In fact, I think it's verifiably true that things that existed on the internet only 20 years ago are either completely gone or so difficult to find they might as well be completely gone, right? Which to me is virtually the same thing. But it got me thinking about the notion of like internet and memory and whether or not we can or should, or whether it's better for us to forget things. And it got me thinking to the idea that like the internet has created a situation where our memories are worse, but also we cannot collectively forget things, right? And so like I believe that the internet has in some ways robbed us of the ability to remember things because we sort of rely on the internet as kind of this repository of memories, right? And so like I don't need to remember the date of, you know, anybody's
D-Day.
birthday. Facebook will do that for us, right?
Yeah,
I don't need to
usually.
remember important dates like D-Day or, you know, what else? I don't even know because I don't remember any dates, right? See, and so like, like all these important dates in history, we don't
The
remember.
day we
All
land.
these-
Oh, the day that JFK was shot, November 22nd.
right.
I think.
Right. These various things. We also don't, we just don't, there are so many things we don't need to remember. And as a result, I think this makes our memory worse. And so people talk about like how we memory hole everything. Like people just forget stuff that was like extremely significant, right? Like they just forget it. It's poof. It's gone from there. Like if you remind them of it, they might remember, but it's like gone from the memory that I would consider like the front of their brain. The internet has basically eroded the front of our brain to the point where we don't remember anything that happened before last week, you know, like, and so that's one thing, right? But also because the internet exists as like this repository of our cultural memory, we don't get to forget things that we might be useful for us to forget. You know, like, you know what I'm saying, Mike? There are some things where it's like
the resurgence of bell-bottom jeans in the mid-90s.
Exactly, stuff like that, sort of stuff like that, right? Like, or things that are like anytime I hear about a kid who like made a mistake and it got documented online and it's like there forever, as long as it's not a mistake that was like, oh, this person like, you know, killed somebody or something, you know, like as long as I'm like, man, wouldn't it be better? Like maybe it's good that I didn't grow up in a time when my actions could be documented for the world to see it. Like, and so there's that, but then there's also like, sometimes I think culturally we need to forget some stuff that will just let us move on from something, you know, like, and we're not moving on from it because the memory is just always there on the internet and it comes back up over and over again, you know, like, and so that just got me thinking like, yeah, maybe the internet is doing something to our memory that is not best for us, if that makes sense. That's just a thought I had earlier this week.
You have way
Anyway.
deeper thoughts than me. I'm like, how to get money. You're like, well, what if the internet?
I spend a lot of time thinking about how to get money too. In fact, I have cash rules everything around me. You know, on my phone right now. You know.
Yeah, good. Okay, good for you.
Dollar bills,
y'all.
Anyway, that's all we have for you this week. Please join us again next week when we'll talk more about the Royals and the internet and money and whatever else comes into our crazy minds. We would like to say thanks for joining us here on Royals Weekly presented by Bet Online. Make sure you're out subscribing to the Royals Weekly Substack. You're leaving us comments on Apple Podcasts. You're leaving us comments on YouTube and everywhere else, giving us thumbs up. All that stuff's great. We will see you next week. Until then, be good to each other.
And go Royals.